Well, welcome to another podcast of the Zaius Report, talking cult movies. This is, of course, it's podcast number 4. So, thank you everybody who has hung around, and if you're here for number 4, then I hope you've been enjoying what you've been hearing. Basically, myself, my name is, of course, Warren, talking just about the cult movies that I absolutely love. And when I'm talking cults, I basically mean, everything from horror to sci-fi to monsters to aliens to ghosts to just covering that whole spectrum of just movies that are a bit out there and a bit of fun. And they're the movies that I absolutely love. So once again, thank you for listening in. Now, a couple of quick shout-outs and thank yous, as always. Thank you, of course, to Alana Evans for the theme music. Thank you so much. I am always in your debt. Thank you, of course, to two great supporters that I have, some really great friends. Ramona at Sports Gal Pal. Please check her out on Twitter. That is Sports GALPAL, or one word, Sports Galpal at Twitter. If you go there, you can find all the links to her two great podcasts, Sports Galpal and also We Should Not Be Friends. So please check them out. Also to the 4 great guys, Cliff, Steve, TJ and Ben, at Only Funny to Us podcast. You can, of course, find them on Twitter at OFTU podcast, or one word. Yep, that's right. So please check them out, and you'll be able to find the links off there to listen to all their podcasts as well. All the shows I've just mentioned are available on iTunes, so you can subscribe and listen to them there. But if you hop onto their Twitter accounts, it'll take you to their web pages, which, of course, will take you to their iTunes subscriptions. So, please do that. The other thing, too, is I suppose I should really give out my Twitter address as well, because I don't think I've actually done that yet. You can, of course, follow me or follow this show on Twitter. It is the Zaius Report, all one word, so that should be pretty easy to find. And there is a link there to my own Twitter as well, but who gives forget about that. Just go to the Zaius Report. And so, of course, you'll find all the just me talking, just general cult movie crap. And, of course, you'll find all the links to all the podcasts there. So so please do that. And, of course, this show is now available on iTunes. It's available on the Spreaker podcasting network as well. It's also available on YouTube, and I think it's also available on SoundCloud. So there's quite a few different ways you can actually listen to this show, and I'll leave it up to you how you want to do that. But, of course, all the links are on my Twitter page. So enough of the rambling, enough of the thank yous, enough of the shout-outs. I want to talk about some cult films, and I've got some great ones lined up for this podcast. Well, at least great in my concept of what makes a great movie anyway. So, one sec, I'll be right back, and we'll start with movie number 1 of podcast number 4. Now, let's start off with some horror. And this time, it's some horror from Australia. Because, look, I don't just ever want to just stick to American, movies. I mean, in past podcasts, we've had Australia mentioned before, obviously Japan, Italy, and, we've got to get to Britain, we've got to get to Norway, we've got to get to Germany. There's so many different countries with so many different films we've got to cover yet. But anyway, this is a lovely little horror offering from Australia. Now, it is from 2011, directed by Carlo Letsema, I think he pronounces his name. But if I get any of these surnames wrong, I'm terribly sorry. I do apologise. Stars Belle Delia, Andy Rodrigo, Steve Davies, and Luke Arnold. Now, this is a really interesting little film. I suppose you would say, I was going to say it's found footage. And of course, here we go, another found footage movie. But it's not actually found footage at all. But it is shot very much in that POV, point of view style. And probably a little bit... has a little bit in common in the way it's done to, let's say, a movie such as Troll Hunter from Norway. This is done in a documentary sort of format, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but I suppose I'll just sort of run through what the film is about and then talk about a few more details after that. Now, our film is actually set in Sydney in the modern day, as in today. And the story basically goes that Australia, of course, is quite an arid, dry country. And water is always a major problem in Australia for Australian towns and cities. There really never is enough. And so in this movie, there's a state election about to happen in New South Wales. And the opposition party, they never actually say which parties they are, but the opposition party, not the government, comes up with this quite interesting plan, and that is that it's going to use the old tunnel network of the train subway system that exists in Sydney to use all the old abandoned tunnels within the... do you realise, I think I haven't told you the name of this movie? It just dawned on me. It's called The Tunnel. Oh, God. I can start this podcast again, but never mind. Look, I'm going to make stuff up like that. I'm sorry. Yes, it's called The Tunnel. Oh, God, Warren. I'm so sorry. But anyway, they come up with this plan that they're going to use the old abandoned railway tunnels and so forth, which collect rainwater and, effluent water and all the rest of it. And they're going to actually then set up some, I don't know, what do you call them, detox stations or whatever to, cleanse all of the water. And then, of course, it can be reused. So it sounds like a very, very good green environmental plan to reclaim water. And everyone is, seems quite excited about it. Now, there is, of course, this idea that there will be some homeless people living, in these tunnels, but no one really sees that as a big problem that can, be dealt with. Well, the government comes to power, and then suddenly this idea is shelved. But not just shelved, it disappears. Everyone is basically banned from talking about it. The government won't release any information on it. The public service just pretends that the plan never actually even existed. And a young reporter, news reporter in Sydney, thinks that this is a bit strange and it needs to be investigated. So she puts together an investigative team of a producer and a camera person and a sound person, and the four of them basically form a team to go off and make a documentary about what they think is actually happening. Now, they're basically roadblocked at every stage by the government for why this is not going ahead. They can't get any answers, and they find a homeless person who they interview, and they find that there's something a bit fishy. There's something that's terrified this guy beyond belief, and he won't really talk about it. So they decide the only way to try to find out what's going on is to go inside these tunnels themselves. And that's exactly what they do. They break in one night and start investigating the tunnels. But as they're doing this, one of their team vanishes, just absolutely disappears. And so what's happened to him? Well, we don't know. And they're starting to hear some really weird noises which are coming through on their sound recording equipment, which they can't really explain. But now, of course, because one of their team members has disappeared, they've got 2 hours of battery life left to run their lights and cameras and so forth. So they basically decide that, look, forget about the documentary. This is now a rescue mission. We have to find what's happened to our friend. We have to find him, and then we can all get out. And then once we're out, we can start this whole process all over again. Well, while they're trying to find him, some strange stuff starts to happen. They find if they put something down on the ground, it moves. It's not necessarily where they put it when they come back. They also start to find a room which is full of blood. And this is starting to get a little bit spooky. They then find when they put their camera down on the ground, or one of their cameras down on the ground, and they come and get it again 2 or 3 minutes later, they find that it's moved, and when they replay the images on it, there are some pretty weird images on there. They know that they're not alone. But the problem is, who's down there with them? Is it a person? Is it maybe some weird criminal gang? Is it druggies? Is it just actually homeless people who are playing with them? Well, they don't know, but judging on the amount of blood they've found and the fact that their friend has disappeared, they're starting to take this very, very seriously. Well, as we then move on a little bit further, we start to make contact with something that they do not understand. It's not human. Or is it human? We don't know. It's so weird and out there, we can't really quite work it out. And now this rescue mission to find their friend has now turned into a question of survival. Can the 3 of them who are left actually get out of this tunnel system alive? Considering that this is a maze of tunnels underneath Sydney, they've got very limited battery life for life left for their lights. Can they get out of here, and can they get out of here alive? Because whatever is down with them is incredibly powerful and incredibly spooky weird. So I don't want to give away, obviously, what happens, but you can get an idea. We've got the real basis of a pretty interesting and pretty cool horror movie. Now, to talk about the style of this movie, I mentioned Troll Hunter in the sense that it's more a documentary style, and this movie is exactly that. It's shot as a documentary. We have POV footage, which obviously our stars are meant to be shooting through their video cameras and also their camera phones. But we also have this intermixed with CCTV footage, government CCTV footage, and we also have it intermixed with interviews of the actual people of this film crew as well. But we only have interviews with 2 of the film crew. So that gives you an idea that, I don't want to say any more, but anyway, we have the interviews with 2 of them, 2 of the film crew. So it's when you watch this, and one of the reasons why I really like it is because it's in the documentary style, and because you've got the mixture of interview, the mixture of CCTV, and the mixture of handheld camera, all put in together, it really seems very, very believable, and you can actually believe that you are watching a documentary. The other thing that's interesting about it, or I thought was quite cool about it, but you won't get it or you won't understand it unless you're an Australian, is that in the movie there are a couple of news articles which are shown, clips of television news segments, and the person they actually got to play the newsreader really is a newsreader in Sydney. So that actually added, I suppose, to the believability of the whole story. But as I said, if you're not Australian, you're not going to get that. So look, I really, really recommend this one. It's, Australian horror. We need more of it. We do tend to make horror movies, with giant alligators. What am I saying? Giant crocodiles, in the Northern Territory. We've made one obviously with sharks. We're starting to make more and more, and serial killers. Oh, we do love making movies about serial killers. But this style of movie is the first one I'm aware of in this style, which has really come out of Australia. So it's definitely worth a look. The one thing I will say, though, if you're looking it up, because of course it's called The Tunnel, don't get confused with a British TV show, which is basically a suspense murder thriller, which is also called The Tunnel. That is totally different. Okay, this is the Australian movie, The Tunnel, from 2011, that you are looking for. So, look, definitely look this one up. It's great.
Oh, we're just careening off the track.
This is going to be a long edit.
Oh, God, that's staying in there.
Okay.
The Only Funny to Us podcast with brand new episodes every Monday night at 8 at onlyfunnytous.com.
Now, one style of movie which I absolutely adore, and I think I've said this before, because I grew up with them on a Saturday night, late at night on TV as a child, or, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, rainy Sunday afternoon in winter or something like that. And that is Japanese sci-fi monster movies, and especially those from the 1960s when they're just so cheesy. And so I thought, let's talk about another one. And the one I thought I would bring up is called Terror Beneath the Sea. And this is really fun. This one really is fun. Now, it's from 1996. It's from 1966. And it stars, what's his name? Sonny Chiba. I think that's the English name he used. I couldn't even try to pronounce his Japanese name, I'm sorry. So, and also Peggy Neal. Now, Peggy Neal, you may remember her because I mentioned her either in the last podcast or the podcast before in another Japanese sci-fi movie called The X from Outer Space. And she plays a very similar role in this movie. Basically, the idea of a modern female, well, what 1966 viewed as being a modern female, as in that, she's got a career and, she's motivated, she's independent, but unfortunately she still cares a lot about the way she looks, about her makeup. She tends to scream every 5 minutes and runs into the arms of her hero man, of course, whenever danger gets a little bit too hard. It's sometimes a bit hard to watch all of that, now in 2006, to see just how incredibly sexist these movies actually are. But you've got to view them, in the time that they were, the 1960s, when everyone was pretty backwards, I suppose, socially. So I don't judge them too hardly on that. I think you've got to judge a movie based on the time it was made. You can't, put today's values onto a movie. But anyway, so what is this film about? Well, it starts off with a group of reporters, which of course are our two heroes, or hero and heroine in this case. And they're with a group of reporters who are on a US or American Navy submarine who are testing a brand new torpedo. So they're there basically, to do all the spin and write the story and all the rest of it. So while this test is going on and they're on the submarine, and somehow, I don't quite know how, they're able to watch what's going on underwater on these video screens inside the submarine. So I'm not too sure how they've just got hundreds of cameras floating around the ocean to film all of this, but anyway, it's a movie, it's a movie. So during the testing of these torpedoes, they notice on the video screen that suddenly this weird humanoid figure swims past the camera. And, of course, it shocks everyone. The Navy is sort of all embarrassed, what has gone on. And the reporters, are basically talking about, is this a bigger story than the torpedoes? What's going on? The guy just swam past the camera. So they start to talk about, is this a dead body floating in the sea? Or is this a crewman who's been, ejected, without anybody knowing? Is there a story in here? Well, anyway, our submarine returns back to base just in time for everyone to get dressed up and have cocktails, which, of course, it's 1960s. We've got to have a cocktail party at some stage during the movie. And during the cocktail party, our two heroes decide that they're going to go back, they're going to get a boat, get some scuba gear, and go back and try to investigate what they saw. So they do that, and during their scuba diving little experience, our female lead, Peggy Neal, is confronted with some sort of weird sea creature. Well, this sea creature, I'll put it to you this way, if you've seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, then you pretty much know what this creature looks like. It's just a cheaper version of that. But in saying that, though, for a 1960s B movie, it's not too bad. It's actually not too bad. Well, she takes a photograph of it while she's screaming and, all underwater and all the rest of it. But she unfortunately drops the camera. Now, they get back to the boat and they go back to, the base, and they're talking to the American Navy. And, of course, the American Navy don't believe, what they've seen. They think this is just the ravings, of course, of a woman. Oh, there's that sexism back again. But never mind. And so our two heroes decide that they better go back the next day and try to find the camera. Well, unfortunately, they don't find the camera. They get kidnapped by more of these sea creatures and taken away to some weird underwater city where they find that it's not ruled by the sea creatures, it's actually ruled by people. And we have almost this Bond-like villain, if you like, who seems to only ever wear sunglasses. He never actually takes his sunglasses off. Who is trying to basically take over the world and create some weird sort of, fascist dictatorship ruled from under the ocean. And we find that these sea creatures, if you like, are genetic mutations that they are creating under the water, turning humans into these half fish, half people creatures, which will become his army of conquest when he conquers the world, as all evil villains, attempt to do. Well, of course, then we have the movie moves on, of course, where the Navy go off to try to find them, and then, of course, they find there's an underwater city, we have to have a big battle, blah, blah, blah. I won't give the ending away, but then again, this is B-grade sci-fi monster from 1966. I don't think it really matters if I gave the story away. But it is lots and lots of fun. The fight scenes are absolutely cheesy and pathetic, but they're great to watch. I swear you can see some of the zippers and so forth on the back of some of these fishmen costumes. It's good. It really is good fun. Great one, for opening up a bottle of red and sitting back and watching and just forgetting life. It's also interesting. I mentioned that our baddie in this movie, reminded me a lot of a Bond villain, and I was actually just suddenly realised when I said that how many similarities there are between this movie and, of course, the James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me. You've got an evil megalomaniac who's living in an underwater city who wants to take over the world. We have a man and a woman who are trying to stop them with the help of Navy submarines. God, that sound... If you take the genetically modified fish people out of the story, it does sound an awful lot like The Spy Who Loved Me. But enough of that. This is a great film. It's great fun. Really recommend it. If you like that cheesy 1960s Japanese sort of sci-fi monster movie, you'll love this. It's another one of these movies too where they sort of have an international cast. Half the cast is sort of American, half is Japanese. There are dubbed versions available of this movie too, which makes it a lot easier to watch. Definitely check this one out. Terror Beneath the Sea. Well, it's that time of the week again. Yes, drum roll, please. Well, I don't have one. I'm going to have to actually download a drum roll or something like that, But anyway, it is time for, of course, Scream Queen of the Week. That sounded pretty piss poor, didn't it? Anyway, Scream Queen of the Week, or maybe to be a little bit more PC these days, Cult Movie Actor of the Week. And this week, our personality, our celebrity, our actor is Monique Parent. And one of the reasons why is because she just has so many movies out there. She's just got so many movies to list on the resume, and they list from everything from sci-fi, horror, indie, and a very, very large amount of erotic movies. So absolutely no doubt a cult queen, if you like. Now, she was born in 1965 in California, USA, of course, and often been described as the thinking person's sex symbol. And from watching her, that sounds like I'm stalking or something, but from viewing her social media, Twitter and Facebook and so forth, she is definitely the thinking person's sex symbol. Very highly intelligent and also very, very nice. It's often very difficult, I suppose, these days to find a celebrity of any sort that actually has time or can actually make the time to communicate with their fans. And this is definitely one thing that she does. So I have to take my hat off and actually sort of say, yeah, very, very nice and charming person. Now, with all of these movies, that she has actually, that she's actually been in, it's very hard to actually try to find the one to actually talk about. But the one thing I suppose I have to say is that if anyone is ever on a blog or anything like that and they're ever talking about her, the one movie that always keeps coming up over and over and over again is a film called Playtime from 1994. So I thought that'll be the one. That's the one we'll actually talk about. Now, it stars Monique Parent, of course, Jennifer Burden, Elliot David, and Craig Stepp as our main leads. And in many ways, it's pretty much just them, apart from a few sort of others that pop in and out. Directed by Gary Delfinger, and it's an erotic film, if you like. What was, often, I suppose, loosely referred to as erotic mystery, the sorts of movies that used to be on Cinemax really through the 1990s and into the early thousands, before they were replaced by the erotic comedy, which we have these days. And I spoke about that briefly last week, so I won't go into any more detail about that. But this is one of the earlier erotic-style movies, obviously being from 1994, where we have a reasonable budget. The acting is actually quite good, script is actually quite good, and we're actually telling a story. We're actually telling a real story here. And once you start, you will actually get quite hooked into what is actually going to happen to our characters. Now, it's a little bit different to a lot of these erotic movies from this period of time. Many of them, and I suppose hence why the term erotic mystery is often used, is because most of them generally had something like a murder in them, or there was police officers or criminals, or there was maybe two rival companies who were trying to do sneaky, underhanded business or something like that. There was always some sort of mystery element, if you like. Some of them even, I remember actually watching, was it a Kira Reid one, which actually had a sort of almost spiritual occult concept as part of the story. So, but in this case, this is actually really just the story of two couples, if you like, and a journey that they go on. So it's a little bit different in that sense. Now, our movie basically starts with our two couples, and our two female stars in the movie. They start to experiment in the sense of they start to experiment with voyeurism, and but this starts off just with themselves, but it starts to then expand a little bit, and one of the husbands, in fact, Jennifer Burton's husband, gets involved, and we suddenly find that this voyeurism has sort of turned more into threesome, if you like. Now, their hope, the three of them, is that they can then invite Monty Parent's husband into this sort of group, and they will be the four of them. And they can, experiment, and they can, sort of live out all of these fantasies together as couples. Well, unfortunately, he doesn't like it. He is very, very unhappy that he has been told that this event has happened. Basically, he's told about it after it's happened, not told about it before it actually happens, and he leaves her. But because he actually runs a legal firm with our other main character, the tension now, of course, starts to build up, and the whole business is now possibly even on the rocks of falling apart. That pressure on our other husband, who had the threesome, starts to build up where he verbally attacks, if you like, his wife, and they then separate. So we've now got basically both couples separated. Then, even to add to this, we find that they basically partner swap. That to try to deal with the emotions and, I suppose, the heartbreak that they're going through, they suddenly find themselves now in relationships with each other's partners. And the film then goes along this path where we need to sort of find out, will they solve these problems? Will they come back together? Will they, refine their bonds, their friendships, and will their original marriages be able to survive? And it's this film actually does work, and it is interesting that if you hop onto Internet Movie Database, or you hop onto, Amazon, or, any of these different places where lots of people are prepared to put up their opinions of movies, it is very interesting that this movie always gets good reviews. I don't think I've yet actually seen a bad review of this movie. So if you do like those sorts of erotic movies, especially the higher budget ones that we had from the 90s, this is definitely one of the ones I'd say would be your very first port of call if you want to see one for the very first time. Definitely it's a couples movie, put it that way. This is not one for the single guy in the basement, okay? This is a couples movie. Definitely, if you can find it, check it out. I know it's pretty hard to find. I know I actually had a look yesterday on Amazon to see if it was actually available still, and I did notice that the only copies around were second-hand, most of which were VHS, and they wanted an absolute fortune for them. So I feel very lucky that I've actually got a copy. But it is available if you're prepared to do a Google search online for free, because, of course, I think we all know what tube sites are. Now, just forget about what a lot of the stuff is that's on tube sites, but this movie is available on several tube sites, so you can actually watch it. Definitely, I recommend it. Playtime. It's one of the better ones that's out there.
I worked in the garden center, and a lady came in, and we had the flowers and the plants, and she asked me how much the chlamydias were.
The Only Funny to Us podcast, available now at onlyfunnytous.com.
Now, during the week, I sat down and indulged myself in a horror double feature. And that was the Ouija Experiment, and then followed by the Ouija Experiment Part 2, the sequel. And so I thought I'd have to talk about them, and especially after seeing number 2, I especially really wanted to talk about them. But anyway, we'll start with the very first one, the Ouija Experiment, as in Ouija board. Now, it was made in 2011, both written and directed by Israel Una, and stars Justin Armstrong, Carson Underwood, Belle Marie, I think it's Huyen, I think it's a Vietnamese name, so if I got that wrong, I'm sorry. Now, I can't pronounce this quite right. I think it's Swazinya and Eric Window. Now, it's basically it's a POV movie, much the same as we spoke about with The Tunnel, and I was going to say it's found footage, but it's not really found footage. It's really just shot more as POV, I suppose you would say. Now, the 5 people in this film, or the 5 main people in this film, other than a few others who will pop in, but are they people? Oh, well, that's a different question. But our 5 main characters here are meant to be friends. We've got a brother and a sister, the brother's girlfriend, and then just 2 of their friends. And they basically get together and they decide that they're going to play with a Ouija board. But they don't really, in a sense, believe in all this supernatural, spiritual stuff. They're going to play with it more in the way that a Ouija board was originally actually invented, which was just meant to be a game. It wasn't really meant to be anything more than that. It was meant to be a fun game. But they still do. It's, obviously the film shot in 2011. They still know it's all got the spiritual sort of side to it. So they follow the rules that they've been given to play with the Ouija board, and that is that you don't ask the spirit how they died. You don't ask the spirit. Although, actually, that throws me a little bit, because I'm sure they do ask the spirits how they died, actually. But anyway, you don't ask the spirit how you're going to die, and you must end every session by saying goodbye to the spirit or spirits that you're actually talking to. And that last rule is where our friends get themselves into a little bit of trouble. Now, so they get together and they start playing with the Ouija board, and they make contact with several spirits. They seem to have made contact with a young girl, with the mother of the young girl, and with an older gentleman who we will find out a little bit later is connected with this mother and daughter. Now, it's what sort of happens here is one of our actors, I think it's Eric Window, he plays his character in the movie. He's a real player. He's the sort of guy that women love to date, but I'll tell you what, you can't trust him because he'll be cheating on you every 5 seconds. And that's exactly what our character is like in this movie. But the girlfriend is suspicious of this, and during one of the Ouija board sessions, she actually asks one of the spirits what's going on. And the spirit basically tells them via the Ouija board, of course, that that he's cheating. Now, what we then get is a huge friend argument with all of them basically breaks out. They're on the street, they're arguing, they're yelling, all the rest of it. And what they realise is that they have not said goodbye. In other words, they haven't hung up the telephone between the real world, our world, and the spirit world. So they've left a portal open. And what we soon basically find out is that some kind of nasty stuff has actually come through this portal. But it gets a little bit more complicated than that, because we realise that these spirits that they're communicating actually want something. There appears to have been some sort of crime or murder committed in the past, and the spirits are sort of asking the our cast members, if you like, to actually solve this mystery as well. So not only do we have all the spooky stuff, of things popping out of out of the dark and making us want to jump, but we also have this mystery which is actually trying to be solved at exactly the same time. Now, so it's actually quite a good movie. Once again, I don't want to give away what goes on towards the end, because it's this movie doesn't take you exactly where you think it's going to go. Just when you think you've worked out what the mystery is and who the bad ghosts are and who the good ghosts are, you probably will be. What you think you've worked out is not actually necessarily the truth. So we do have some twists actually built into this. How scary is it? Well, not that scary, to be honest. There's a couple of jump in your seat moments. There is one scene where one of our cast is trying to go to sleep, starts to hear noises in her bedroom, and she's basically visited by a spirit in her bedroom. And I have to admit, that scene is actually freaky. It is actually quite scary and spooky. But it's probably the only really scary one that's actually, in the movie. It's much faster paced, though, than, let's say, something like Paranormal Activity, but it doesn't have anywhere near the budget of any of those Paranormal Activity movies. So sometimes, when we do see the spirits, it's not as freaky in a sense as it could have been, maybe with a much higher budget. But then again, people work with what they've got to work with. So, it's not that bad. It's not that bad, at all. It's not the best sort of horror ghost POV movie I've ever seen, far from it. But it's still definitely worth having a look at. It's on Netflix, so it's a very easy one. And of course, because you've got your Netflix account, it doesn't cost you a cent to watch. So definitely it's worth checking out. But I'm just going to take a quick break and have a sip of water because my voice is going on me. But then I want to talk about the Ouija Experiment 2. And this is where my double feature night all went horribly wrong. Now, if you are fans of the Blair Witch Project, then I think you will remember the sheer disappointment and almost anger at wanting to punch the screen out when you were subjected to a movie you were really looking forward to called Blair Witch 2, which of course was an absolute stinker and had nothing really whatsoever to do with the original film, other than the fact it was just a marketing exercise which stole the title, or which, I shouldn't say that, which used the title. Now, the Ouija Experiment 2 isn't quite like that, but there are a lot of similarities, unfortunately. And it's a real shame because I did actually quite enjoy, as I said before, Ouija Experiment 1, although it's not the freakiest movies by any stretch of the imagination, but I still did quite enjoy it. But Ouija Experiment 2, I'm sorry, but it is a stinker. And it was written and directed by Israel Una, and look, I don't know what went wrong here, but I'll give you a couple of clues. First of all, the first movie is shot as POV, as we said, and it works. The problem is the second one is not. It's actually shot as a mainstream movie. And I suppose that disappointed me a lot because I was expecting, once again, the POV genre. Now, where this movie had an upside was the concept of what it was about. Now, the sequel is, it's not a direct sequel of the first movie, but it sort of is. What happens is that it starts off in a movie cinema where they're showing the the Ouija Experiment, the very first one. And so what happens is that the Ouija Experiment 1 that we've just watched is now a movie, and the cast members, or at least 3 of the cast members of Ouija Experiment 1, are in this movie, but they're not playing the cast members, they're playing themselves this time. And they've been hired basically to help promote the movie, which is playing in this cinema. Now, I thought that whole idea was really, really clever. But unfortunately, it really does go downhill from there. We're joined by a few other actors in this movie who will, of course, as we know, with this one, though, the death toll is somewhat higher as the movie goes on. But we're joined, returning, I suppose, is Justin Armstrong, Swazina, I really don't know if that's, I think that's how she pronounces her name, and Eric Window come back in this movie, obviously playing themselves this time rather than the characters. And we're joined by Sharon Snedden, Jessica Wills, Sally Greenland, and Tom Zebrod, I think it is. And it just doesn't somehow seem to work. They set this whole thing up so you can get these special tickets and you can watch the movie, and then you can spend the night in the cinema where the cast members from the movie will help spook you out and play ghost tricks on you and all this sort of thing. But what they don't realise is that there are 2 things happening in the background. One is that this cinema supposedly is ruled, if you like, by a monster. And when I say monster, and this is just where it just gets out there, I mean the sort of monster where, those stories, where a couple has some deformed child, so they lock it up in the basement for 20 years and feed it fish heads, and it's chained to the wall until one day it escapes. I'm talking that type of monster. And then on top of that, we have the Eric Window character. He continues with that whole player thing that he was doing in the first movie, and while he's trying to pick up one of the chicks in the cinema, they bring out the Ouija board. And this is about the only connection in that sense, the only Ouija connection. They bring out the Ouija board for about 3 minutes. He shows it to her to try to impress her, because it's meant to be a prop, of course, from the first movie. And by doing that, he moves the thing a little, moves the board around and calls for a spirit to come and all the rest of it. Well, of course, he has opened another portal, he hasn't said goodbye, and another spirit, of course, enters in as well, and this time this one is angry and very vicious. So now we've got a monster which is chained up in the theatre. We've also got this ghost which is going around hunting everybody down. It's not POV anymore, it's now shot as a regular movie. There is nothing frightening or scary in this movie at all. I swear you could let a child watch this and not get scared. It just, for me, doesn't work. And it was a real disappointment, unfortunately. But, hey, look, sometimes you watch the first one, you want to watch the second one. But I will warn you, as I said with Blair Witch, you're going to fall for the same problem that you had with Blair Witch 2. It's just not going to live up to the same expectations of the first one, unfortunately. But, hey, if you want to give it a try, give it a try. But for me, I would probably recommend watch the first one, give the second one a miss. Now, this is a little offering that I absolutely adore. I have it on DVD, and the first time I ever saw this was many years ago, probably 10 years ago, when I was actually in a video store. Yes, a video store, back in the days when there used to be video rental stores, and I hired a DVD called Boa versus Python, and I loved it so much I hopped onto Amazon and bought my own copy because it's absolutely great fun. Now, it's from 2004 and directed by David Flores, and it's, as the title probably is a bit of a giveaway, Boa versus Python. And the whole concept of the story is, what do you do if a 50-metre snake escapes into the general vicinity of a city? Well, there's clearly only one thing you do: find another 50-metre snake and send it out after it to try to catch it. And I'm not joking, that's the concept of this movie. It is really, really fun. Now, it stars David Hewlett, Jamie Bergman, Angel Boris Reed, and Adam. What's his surname again? That's right, Adam Kendrick. My apologies. I have to also apologise. I actually found out that I actually need glasses, and I keep putting it off. Yeah, it's one of those things. I've reached that age where I realise I need glasses, and I'll tell you what, my reading is getting really, really bad because I'm starting to find it really difficult now. So hopefully by next week I will have got my prescription filled and actually have glasses, and I'll do a better job at reading my notes. But anyway, back to Boa versus Python. Now, some of the cast, I think you'll probably recognise a number of these names. David Hewlett, of course, you'll remember him from Stargate. He's I suppose, half British, half Canadian, born in Britain, raised in Canada. And you'll remember him because he of course, plays the Canadian scientist in Stargate Atlantis. So you'll definitely remember him. Angel Boris Reed, well, she's been in a ton of movies. She's an ex-Playboy model, and she gets topless in this too. So that's another reason for pervs like me to actually want to watch it. And was it Jamie Bergman? She's another ex-Playboy model as well. But trust me, these two women can actually act. Okay, they really can. So it's not actually a bad little cast, to be truthful, that they actually put together for this movie. Now, I suppose it came out of a lot of these giant snake movies. We had, Boa in 2001, we had Python in 2000, and I think we've had Python 2, Python 3, I think there's even a Python 4. It's quite a lot of these movies. But this is a combination where we've basically got two giant snakes fighting each other. Now, it was all filmed in Bulgaria, so the interesting thing about this is that it's fascinating that a number of the American characters in it have some quite interesting sort of Eastern European accents, and also it's stunning how the American army looks incredibly Russian, and that's probably because it is. They're all using Russian equipment borrowed from the Bulgarian army. But, hey, it's B-movie, so, who cares? It really doesn't matter. Now, our story here is that a rich hunter, I don't know, a Donald Trump type character, but this guy's actually attractive. He, with his girlfriend, they run these mega hunting tours where they basically send people off to hunt these weird and wild animals. And he, of course, has this giant 50-metre snake, which people can pay a fortune to join him on a hunting mission and try to hunt it down. Unfortunately, it all goes wrong, and this snake escapes its transport and ends up basically around this sort of rural town, if you like, supposedly in the United States. Now, two of our characters then, Jamie and David, who are the one is meant to Jamie Bergman is meant to be the marine I think she's meant to be a marine biologist, and David Hewlett is meant to be a herpetologist, and they get together because he has raised another giant snake himself, and she's developed all this special sort of video equipment, which I think she uses with dolphins, and they somehow managed to get it all together and put this headset and video camera on this giant snake, which they send out to hunt down this other giant snake, which has escaped. Well, of course, it doesn't really go to plan. You know it's not really going to go to plan. And, most of our cast slowly are going to either get eaten, strangled, or ripped in half at some stage as this movie actually progresses. But it really is good. I really enjoyed it. I've watched it numerous times, and it never bores me. If you like the giant monster sort of genre from the United States, if you like movies, like from The Asylum, from sci-fi, then you're going to like this. The only downside I would probably say is because it's from 2004, the snakes are CGI, of course, but the problem is it's 2004, and so the CGI really is not quite where it is today. So they can look a little bit cheesy. I know I use that word a bit, but it sums it up. They're a bit parmesan-y, not really quite up to today's standard. But the movie is good. It's got some funny bits. It holds you. The plot actually does hold you for this sort of film. So definitely get some thumbs up. So check it out. Boa vs. Python. It's readily available, and I love it. If you're into big monster movies, check this one out. I'm back. Sorry about that. I think we had some dead air there for a second. Sorry about that. I'm back. Now, I was going to actually do another film called The Green Slime, which I'd mentioned in an earlier podcast, one of the Gamma movies, which I absolutely love, the Gamma movies. That's Gamma. That's not Gamera. Gamma. But we've hit the hour mark. I've run out of time, so I'll save it for next week. So, get ready for that, The Green Slime, because it's a pretty cool movie. So anyway, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed podcast number 4. I'll be back, of course, next week with podcast number 5. Just remember, of course, you can follow me on Twitter, which, of course, is the Zaius Report, all one word. I will follow you back, I promise, if you follow me. You please, of course, check out 3 people who have been a great support for me and for this show. That, of course, is OFTU Podcast on Twitter. That is, of course, Sports Gal Pal on Twitter, and of course Alana Evans on Twitter. Please check all 3 of them out. Love you guys. You've been a great help and great support. That's it. If I say anything else, I'll just be rambling. So I'll be back next week with podcast number 5 of the Zaius Report. Talk to you then.